you all for coming. I would just like to introduce our three panelists. We have Perry Landesberg over here, who will be going to Malaysia on a Fulbright program. Matthew Stefanski here from the Polish Embassy, and Walter Tyrna from Booz Allen Hamilton. And we have Delta Phi Epsilon's professional advisor and the SIS career advisor, who will be moderating this exciting panel today. Take it away.
David Fletcher.
He's not.
Hi, my name is David Fletcher, and I do work for the School of International Service as the undergraduate career advisor. My office is in the lobby, to put in a shameless plug. Any of those of you who have not been in to see me should do so. We should get started earlier, not later, on your career development. So, welcome tonight, Delta Phi Epsilon's networking panel. We have three distinguished alumni. They are gainfully employed. Perry, are you still at Hanover until you're Fulbright? Good. So what we're going to do tonight is grill these guys with really tough questions. How they enjoyed their experience here at SIS, at AU, what they liked about Delta Phi Epsilon, their jobs that they're currently at. But what I'd like to make sure is that we ask the questions that you want asked. I'm going to throw some softball questions out there, but if you really want to grill them, it's your turn when we can open it up to questions and really get some answers from these guys. So with that, can we talk about your internships and part-time work while you were in school here at AU?
Sure. So when I was at AU, freshman year, I wanted to get a job on campus, so I ended up working with the the International Student Scholar Services Office. If there are any internationals in the audience, I probably have worked with them at some point. I started off just doing some office work for them, and then ended up kind of branching out into like every field that they actually had there. So for a time I was helping with visa work, and we were doing like H-1B or F1 to J-1. I was doing that. I started working with the head of the office on a separate committee called the NAFSA Embassy Dialogue Committee, because she knew that I was interested in embassies and diplomacy and everything like that. So we worked in, we essentially helped the education departments of those embassies create connections between them and universities across the U.S. So that was an extra thing that I did. And then as far as internships go, I was there for 4 years, by the way, working with the ISS office. And then as far as internships go, I worked one summer with the Embassy Series, which is a nonprofit around DC. You may see them. They do like classical concerts at various embassies. I was on their marketing committee. The second internship that I had was in Brussels, part of the program. I did an internship with the EU-Ukraine Business Council, and then so that promoted trade between the EU and Ukraine. And then my third internship, of course, was the one in Sarajevo with the political section at the U.S. Embassy out there. That was much more hands-on than anything I had done. We did actual diplomacy work, so that was what I've done.
Yeah, sure.
I also did 3 internships, so it's not the 8 as you hear sometimes at AU where people do one every single semester, which I think is a little much, but I did the rite of passage on the Hill, which was, I guess that goes without saying.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? I'd like for our audience to know what they're in for when they go on there.
I didn't get too much out of it, to be honest. Luckily I was only doing 2 days a week, so it wasn't a drain on my schedule, but I think it's just good to just go and see what work in a big organization looks like, and just kind of getting dressed professionally regularly, and I think it's good, to get in the mindset of that and kind of get in the rhythm of things. I did as a freshman, so I think it was good to kind of get that under my belt to go forward. So it definitely helps. There's definitely some benefits to it. But then it was also actually really useful for me when I went to the European Parliament to kind of contrast the two legislative systems and how people approached it, starting from the way people dressed differently to the way people interacted. The fact that there's about a dozen cafes in the European Parliament to no cafes in the US Congress. So a lot of difference that you can kind of pick up on. Actually, not the same, but pick up on. So I did the Hill and then the European Parliament, which was a summer internship with the Polish MEP, which was really interesting to learn about the culture, but also just the legislative work and speaking different languages and translators and so on. So that was also interesting, and Brussels was a lot of fun. So. And then lastly, I did the Woodrow Wilson Center, which was a history internship, but also tied into Central Europe because I worked in the Cold War project.
Next question. Your applications for scholarships, for graduate school, if you have done those, and for your job.
As explained with my internship career history, went from small NGOs to big companies to consulting, so kind of veered off into a different path. And Perry had mentioned mentorship, and it's super important because the guy I met at my restaurant, he ended up being a really good mentor with me. And there are two lessons with that. One, DC is a very tiny place. In terms of the city, we're like a large town. So if you go out there and create a name for yourself with a club, or you just happen to work in a restaurant and you can talk pretty competently, you can meet people and you never know who you run into. So along those lines, in terms of me getting my job at Booz Allen, that part was fairly easy. He kind of forwarded off my resume to a special program they have that kind of is geared towards new hires. So I got into that program. The interview itself was a lot to deal with. It was an hour and a half long, 3 consecutive interviews with 4 people. So it was a lot, but what got me through that was the guy recommended me for the program. We sat down about a week before, and he was like, all right, I'm not going to tell you what they're going to say, but have these themes in mind and prepare yourself. Like, give yourself mock interview questions, just try to prep as much as possible, because they will ask, for example, why do you want to be a consultant? And at the time I didn't know, I thought it was a good idea. So, I guess it was a good idea. But, you have to think about those things, because you may want something, but then when you think about it, you don't really know why you want it. So that part was easy. Interviews, check. My job in particular required a top secret security clearance, and those are horrible. It's a horrible process. It's just horrible. Because the form you fill out essentially has you tell your life story from the age 18 onwards, with where you lived, where you've gone to school, where you've worked, where you haven't worked, and have a point of contact for every single one of those points. And then you send it off to a big government machine, and that processes things and sends investigators to talk to your friends. A lot of people in this room have been interviewed on my behalf. So
I'm sure
it's
your trip to Cuba didn't put any
and
wrinkles
don't
in there.
travel anywhere weird. That's a fun fact. Because if you travel somewhere weird, you have to account for that as well. So if you're interested in government consulting at all, there's not too much I'd say you could do now internship-wise, but if you can happen to get a clearance through State Department or some other government agency, get it, because you're saving yourself a hell of a lot of time, because once you have your foot in the door, the rest will be easy. And I think one big thing, I don't know what their timelines for jobs were, but I think for me the biggest lesson was an issue of, when you're in college, you apply to an internship and you usually know fairly quickly whether you get it or not. But with this security clearance process, I didn't know until I knew. And I asked my investigator how long this can take. And she said, well, it's like 3 months to a year. And a friend of mine, she waited 6 months for hers. A friend of mine waited a year. I was super lucky. I don't know how it happened. I only waited 3 months. But if you're going to that field, be prepared to either work somewhere else or just know how to stick it out. And I guess this is a theme for applying for jobs in general. You won't know right away. Like, the first job I applied to was a bit of a kind of a crapshoot, but it was more for just sending out a resume. But I applied to Council of Foreign Affairs, and it took 5 months to give me a rejection email. So the timelines are different, and you just have to get used to that. So, it will be discouraging, but you just have to have that mentality going in.
Talk about what you can talk about, what you do for work.
I'll talk about the company that I'm with right now, which is Hanover Research. I've been there since February of last year. It's similar in nature, but not in scale to what Walter does. I kind of call it consulting, like diet consulting is my term for it. Basically, their model is kind of like Netflix, think of it like this. They go to companies, they say, if you want to learn about this market that you're thinking about entering, or this market that you're already in, any questions you have about the market, anything like that, you put together like a research project for us to do, and it goes in a queue. And you buy a queue from us, and then the research projects that you give to us, we will keep giving to researchers. And what I am over there, my hat over there, is Senior Primary Research Associate. So what they have me do is, most of the people who work there are secondary researchers, which means when they get a project, they go online, they go into wherever they can, they try to find information on this market, or whatever research question that companies have for us. I'm on the market side, by the way. It's an education side of my company. I'm on the market side. So they'll have these research questions for us, we'll have researchers do it, And as a primary researcher, I mainly try to find information that you can find through secondary means, which normally means prospecting for people who are already in the industry and getting in contact with them and trying to interview them. So, you know, I get all different kinds of markets. Every week I get a different market to look at. Sometimes it's boring, like you know, hand tools or grading. Sometimes something like lasers or, you know, the energy market in India or something like that. So companies would go to us to give us a question, and I'll look into, you know, who's in the laser industry, who would know about this type of laser, who's these companies, who are the big companies, and what's the type of person that needs to speak to at the company. They would know something that you can't find online. Sometimes it's like sensitive market information. You try to offer them incentives, you just try to get them to talk. So that's mainly what I'm doing right now. I have a few other things that I do for them, but yeah, that's my current position.
If you could give one piece of advice to this audience, something you wish you had known, or something to avoid a mistake you made, one bit of information that you could pass them, what would it be?
I guess I would say that networking isn't about the business cards. It doesn't matter if you pass out business cards or not, because 99% of them is going to be tossed aside or put in a drawer or never looked at again. It's more about showing your face and being around.
I love AU, but one of the things that I guess we don't focus enough on is diversifying, I guess, your even gen ed education. I'd say definitely, if you can, if you have a lot of credits left, take a science. Because I distinctly remember in my interview with Booz-Allen, they were very impressed. I took a year of physics, and I sucked at it. They don't have to know that, but I took a year of physics, and you know, I told them about my capstone paper, and they're like, "Oh, this is very applicable to designing, you know, whatever." And I said, "Yeah, totally." And you know, if you can fake it till you make it, but you have enough technical knowledge to go so far, that's worth a lot. So even if you're not good at science, just expose yourself to it. You know, bonus points in computer science. Yeah.
I want to, in a sense, expound on what Matt said about networking. It's more than just about giving out business cards. It's really about forming relationships. I have gotten countless business cards. I have given countless business cards. Most of it has amounted to absolutely nothing. But the people who I have the most fruitful relationships with are the ones who really know me much better than that. And the key to doing that, or there's one key to doing that, is actually finding common interest in someone. Common interest in that you will keep talking to them. It's weird to think that, you know, you meet someone and you just keep talking to them, but I mean, that's how you do it. You, for example, one thing that I love doing here in DC is going to like, you know, cultural events, embassy stuff like that. And I went to a few of these. I met someone there. Well, I met a guy recently who really loved this kind of stuff too, and so we have like email exchanges, like, "Oh, did you see this? Did you see that?" We meet up at these things, and you know, he introduced me to someone else who's also interested in that. And oh, by the way, I happen to know a job that's open. You know, you seem like the kind of guy who would be into that. So find a common interest with people like that, and so somewhere else we can go with that. But yeah, just really try to form relationships with people, and don't. Oh, and as far as reaching out to people who you think would be good for your career, like for example, informational interviews, just blindly going up to people. It can be the most awkward thing in the world, and it really is the most awkward thing in the world. But think about it this way, you know, all of them have done that too. That's how they got where they are. So they know where you're coming from. They're not going to treat you weirdly, hopefully. And also, think about it this way, if you don't reach out to them, what good are they to you anyway? If you don't end up actually reaching out and talking to someone, then they're just going to be whoever. So at least send an email to someone who you really want to meet and say, "I really want to talk about this, I'm really interested." And if they say no, then they say no. If they say yes, that's really good.
Could we please have a round of applause for